Okay, there we go. It's live. So I'll do like a formal intro and then we'll dive right in, I think.
All right, cool. Let's do it. Whenever
Okay,
you guys are ready.
cool. I'll bring us back in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. My name is Andrew Ball, and we have a very special segment for you today. We're going to be talking about a league which I don't think that we've ever really talked about before, Reed. Is that correct? It's nodding.
Well, only in passing.
Only in
not
passing, yeah.
clearly not enough to be a North American-based podcast.
We have a ways to go before we get there. But we are super excited to have with us today Cesar Hernandez. I've seen his work on ESPN FC and 442, and you also write for a whole host of other places, right, Cesar? It seems like.
Yeah. Whoever's foolish enough to give me money to hear my thoughts. Yeah, just. But yes, I guess this is where I just quickly. Yeah, it's, also Soccer Nation, and also sometimes for Vice, and just Footmex Nation as well.
A busy man.
Yeah, most definitely. Just it's a little bit of a weird infatuation with this league that I have.
But we are very excited to have him on. And Cesar, thanks for joining us, man.
Of course, thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to talk about Liga MX. I might know a couple things about it. I might have you guys just take charge and tell me about the league, but I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, that sounds good. So kind of the whole brainchild for this was when I noticed that Liga MX for the first time would be streaming on Facebook Live in the US in English. So I know a very little bit about the league. I know the teams, know some of the star players, and have occasionally watched in Spanish on Univision or some TV channel when I'm looking for my soccer fix. But now that it's going to be on in kind of a more widely distributed fashion by Facebook, which I think is super cool, I thought it'd be interesting to have someone who knows a lot more than I do about the league on, and a lot more than I think all of our listeners do to kind of talk about why Liga MX is cool and why you should be checking it out. So I guess kind of my initial starting point is, if you haven't really watched the league before, why should this new opportunity, why is this a good chance to start keeping tabs on what I didn't realize, but makes perfect sense, and actually in hindsight is the most watched league already in the US.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of this is due to the fact of the league setup, due to there being 2 tournaments in 1 year. It makes the league a lot more fast-paced. It puts a lot more emphasis. It puts a lot more significance for every single match. So because that, for better or worse, you'll get a lot of very attack-minded, high-pressuring, very intense soccer week in and week out. It's somewhat atypical to see a team sit back or see a team be fairly conservative with their style of play. I mean, you do see that there's a team like Tigres. They're a perfect example of a team that does that. But no, it's a very exciting, very as I mentioned, attack-minded, thrilling league. It's and I mean, one thing I'm sure we're going to talk about later too is just, I mean, it's not just the play in the field either, which is alluring and attractive. It's the atmosphere. Even though you're not actually, these games could be hundreds, thousands of miles away. You see these packed stadiums, which give this incredible atmosphere. You see a team like Monterrey, who their average attendance last season was higher than that of Chelsea, was higher than that than Tottenham, higher than that of Liverpool in Mexico. And it's incredible. And you see why this league is the most popular in the United States.
Yeah, well, that was actually something I was curious about too, in terms of fan culture, because that's something that the three of us are super interested always in hearing about. How would you trying to find like a way of thinking about fan culture? How would you compare it, not necessarily directly, but compare with European leagues or other Central South American leagues in terms of what it looks like? I mean, it's kind of its own unique thing, but
yeah, it is most definitely its own unique things. And I guess I could see what would be difficult to try to find a good way asking that, because it's difficult for me to really compare it to another league. It's maybe it's due to the fact that you see a lot of rivalries in this league. I mean, most of these rivalries encompass two major clubs, which are the two most popular clubs. You have America, and then you also have Chivas, who have some of the bigger rivalries. But it's just, I don't know. It's to be honest, it's really difficult to find a similar comparison. Just because of, I mean, Liga MX, the style of play, the way, I mean, it's the way it's set up, the way the relegation is set up, the way the whole league is set up. It's almost living in its own little bubble. Like there are a lot of, and which is why I think a lot of people are just starting to figure out how exciting the league is. You see, I mean, I think I saw an article recently about the Guardian talking about how how it's if you want to look for something outside of Europe to watch, it has to be Liga MX. It's just for the attendance, just for the sheer excitement. But with the fan culture, it's and like I said, it's difficult to find a comparison. But I think if we are talking about the fan culture, it's important to bring up the numerous amount of the numerous amount of rivalries that you see in Mexico, and just the high attendance numbers that lead to these really thrilling, exciting games.
Yeah. What really interests me about Liga MX is that this league started in the 40s, and it's been running a pretty similar system, if I'm not mistaken, for the last couple of decades, of this very particular league structure.
Mm-hmm.
But unlike the MLS, where it's North America, like some people treat it as kind of like a pet league, everything's super real. Like there's not, like we're based out of the Midwest. I live in Milwaukee, and the fake Chicago Fire rivalry is the Brimstone Cup. Like that's nothing. I don't feel anything. Like I've never thought about fans in Texas for a second as rivals. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas these are deep felt and often geographic and cultural rivalries that form. And I think that adds so much more to the league. Like no disrespect to some of, the MLS games, but I think every Liga MX game more or less matters.
But yeah, I think that's if we're going to, I think that is more of a cultural thing, more so to do with the impact and the significance of soccer in Mexico compared to that of the U.S., regardless of whether the leagues, the ages of the league, or how long the sport has been around in each country. I think it's soccer is undoubtedly king in Mexico. They're the only other sport that could really come close. I mean, you could say maybe baseball, boxing. I mean, there are a couple other sports out there that are also popular, but I think as opposed to the U.S., where soccer, I'm sure you guys have talked about this a lot. It's, I guess I get that a little bit here in San Diego too. It is gaining significance. It is gaining popularity, but it can't compare to that of the NFL, the NBA. If we talk about, we were talking about just like fan culture just a little bit ago. I mean, you see the animosity and the rivalry in like a college football match. I don't watch a lot of college football, but when I see that, that's something that I think of as kind of close to maybe what you would see in Liga MX. So I think it's there. It just needs to. The sport just needs to become more popular, I guess. And I get, as you mentioned, hopefully it isn't as forced as, the Brimstone Cup, which I watched some Major League Soccer, but I was unaware of the Brimstone Cup.
For good reason. Yeah. And another thing that I was really curious about, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, is that it's with soccer, football, such a long-standing tradition in Mexico. From your eye, have you kind of been able to? Is the cyclical nature of the rise and fall of soccer in the States? I think it's a really good juxtaposition to look at the leagues in Mexico, the league in Mexico and the league in the States over a long period of time, because like back in the day, the New York Cosmos days, where you had Pele and Beckenbauer, and like the Rowdies even had some big name players. Whereas I think it's a little bit of a difference of more of a cyclical nature in the States, where it's just Liga MX has just been growing almost linearly since its foundation.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with, I mean, for now, I mean, these ticket prices are going up. You know, the ticket prices are fairly reasonable for most matches. You know, so you're going to have a high proportion of people like attending these games. And there's also something to be said about the Mexican American population here in the U.S., which has helped, you know, boost that. I don't know that. I mean, at least the attend. At least I wasn't say the attendance, but at least the attention um, over here. You'll see why teams will go from Mexico over here to the U.S. to play friendlies, you know, to make significant amounts of cash out here in the U.S. But yeah, I think it's no, I think a lot of it has to do, like I said, with the ticket sales. I think a lot of it has to do with also just there's a lot of parity in the league as well. It's I think what keeps fans so interested in the league is the fact that even though you would say America and Chivas, they're the two most successful clubs in Mexico. I mean, it's never a given that those guys are going to win the championship. It's never a given that the first place team, regardless of the season, it's never a given that that team that finishes at the end of the regular season, that first place team is going to win the championship. And I think that parity is what makes it so interesting to not only people in Mexico who, as we mentioned, I mean, it's continued to grow, it's continued to get attention. You know, attendance numbers are going up too. It's not only just to Mexico, but as we've talked about, there are people outside of the region who are just starting to recognize, you know, how thrilling and exciting these matches are.
So I kind of want to get your take on what's going on now. If I'm not mistaken, the show might be me botching Spanish pronunciations. The clausura?
Yes, it is the clausura. It's close enough. Close enough,
Okay.
clausura. Yeah.
Okay, I take French, so like they're both Romance languages.
There you go.
That started fairly recently, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, the Apertura and Clausura, because what it was, before this, they had the Invierno and Verano, which was also just a setup where they split the year up into two different seasons. And actually, the league has actually gone through, and this is fairly recently, it's gone through different structures. Right now, there's it's all 18 teams play each other once per season. Before that, I want to say I should know this, but I want to say it was about 2003, 2004. They used to have groups where each team, instead of just one big group, you would have 4 different groups where the teams were split up. But yeah, no, it's it is the Apertura and the Clausura, and the Apertura starts during the summer and ends in the winter. Then they take a break during December, depending on the final, because sometimes you can have a final that goes into late December, as we saw last year with the Club World Cup somewhat intervening with the tournament. And then it picks up again in January, and that's when the Clausura, as you mentioned, the Clausura starts, and the final is usually in late May, but after a recent referee strike, we might see a final push back into June, but I highly doubt that.
I do actually. Now that you mentioned the referee strike, I saw that on the news.
Yeah.
But in terms of the play on the field, kind of what storylines have cropped up now that we're a month or two into league play?
I mean, I think the big one is that of Tigres and America. These are two teams who were finalists last season, and at the moment, they're not in the top 8. In Liga MX, in order to make it to the playoffs at the end of the regular season, you need to finish within the top 8. Right now, America is in 13th place, and Tigres, they're currently in 12th place. So it's that's interesting to note, but I mean, I think that's also highly representative of the parity that you'll see in Liga MX, where it's not that strange to see a team do extremely well, and then next season comes around and they can't find a way back into the playoffs. So I think that's the big one right now that people are focusing on. Another big thing that people are talking about is Chivas. Of course, when you have a team doing very well, that gets a significant amount of attention, especially with a team like Chivas that fields players who are they're a Mexican-only club. Although there are some players who have been born in the U.S. Playing the team, they're still Mexican-American, which is still part of the club identity. But right now they're in first place, And when you have a team that popular, like sit up in first place, that just I mean, let's just say that's essentially like half the stuff I'm going to have to be writing about for the next few weeks. But that's another thing to mention, and also the relegation race, which is set to end at the end of the regular season. This regular season, it's getting pretty close between a few different candidates. So that's something worth watching too, because it's. I mean, as you guys, I mean, I think you guys. I saw on your Twitter account, you guys talk a lot about EPL, so you guys obviously know how that goes with watching the EPL, how exciting those relegation races can get.
Yeah, some weeks that's the best story to come out of the match week, where you know Chelsea will get their standard 1-0 win and Tottenham will win and blah 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 blah. But then you have a relegation 6-pointer where Palace beat Swansea or something crazy like that, and I think that's really interesting about Liga MX. I didn't realize that there was such transition in the positionings from season to season, where you got to kind of keep your eye over your shoulder.
Yeah, no, like I said, there's just there's a lot of parity, and it's I feel like especially with the playoffs, there's just, I mean, I guess you could say that about a lot of playoffs, but just more. I feel like what's more important than your actual like seeding, like whether you're the first seed or the eighth seed, is just the momentum that you carry into the playoffs. So it's not, like I said, it's not weird to see a first place team get immediately knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. So yeah, it's and once again, I think that's what makes it so exciting, is just how just the parity that you see constantly, or the fact that just big teams will constantly lose to the smaller teams. So yeah.
Kind of one other thing I wanted to get your opinion on. The MLS is obviously trying to grow. They're trying to become not just the top league in North America, but one of the top leagues in the world. But they kind of constantly are stymied by Liga MX teams in the Champions League. I'm a Vancouver Whitecaps fan, so
that was a little painful yesterday. I'm sorry about that.
Firsthand last night. In terms of both, like in general and in terms of the Champions League, and you can kind of choose whatever route you want, but how big a gap do you perceive between the two leagues? And do you think that there will be some change in the power structure at some point in the next decade or two?
I think a lot of Liga fans don't want to admit this, but I think the gap is closing. I mean, I know immediately when I say that, I have a lot of Liga MX fans, especially Mexico fans too, just because that animosity between Mexico and the U.S. In soccer just permeates into leagues constantly. But every time I say something nice about MLS, or I say online that that a player is doing well in MLS and that the league is closing that gap, I get a lot of criticism. But I think that, I mean, especially it seems like from what I heard, and I wrote about this recently, is that there seems to be more targeted allocation money being put into Major League Soccer, and through that you're not just getting those big DP guys. You're not getting Giovanni Dos Santos. You're not getting David Villa. You're getting those players who could fill the number 4 to number 7 roster spots, not the top 3 roster spots, but like number 4 to number 6. And those kinds of players are the ones that thrive in Liga MX. I'm talking about the Argentines that you'll see spread across the entire Liga MX. There's a surprising amount of South American players who go to Liga MX, because that is you could say that Liga MX is the best league on so many levels in the Western Hemisphere. And I think through the more investment that you'll get in Major League Soccer through targeted allocation money, I think that the gap is going to be closed. It's going to take a bit of time, and I think unfortunately the only way we really have to measure it is the CONCACAF Champions League. I don't think that's the best way to measure it, to be honest. I know what you guys think. I've never really seen that as a good way of really seeing which team is. Maybe it's because it's the only way we have to measure who is doing better. And so many Mexican and Liga MX fans will point to those titles and be like, no, Mexican teams are by far the best. I was like, no, give them time. MLS is doing a lot of things right, that even regardless of their problems, they're doing a lot of things right that Mexico needs to catch up on. But I don't know. That's just I don't know if I answered your question. I can ramble a little bit. I feel like I've been doing that so far today. My apologies.
No,
we
it's been
love
great.
it.
And a quick follow-up, and I saw an article of yours that I think will give the answer away, but do you think that MLS improving will in turn improve the quality of play in Mexico, kind of a competitive
Oh yeah.
nature between the two leagues?
Most def. I think that there are a few reasons why. I mean, right now with I think the first thing that comes to mind, and maybe I didn't go into this enough in the article that I wrote, but that there. I mean, I just mentioned that you'll see a lot of South American players. You'll see a lot of talent from outside of Mexico. Thriving Liga MX, which I think is great. I think that's awesome. But that also limits the amount of playing time that you'll see for young Mexican players. A lot of those young Mexican players aren't willing to make the leap to the U.S. because there's this perceived idea that Major League Soccer is not at the same level as Liga MX. If Major League Soccer does reach that level, that then provides an opportunity to play for different clubs. And these aren't clubs that would be far away from home. It's not like they're making the leap to Europe. They can still play in a highly competitive league just next door over in the U.S. And I think that'd be excellent for the Mexican national teams. I think that's the first thing that comes to mind. And obviously, for big clubs like an America, like a Tigres, you could even say for certain maybe Mexican Americans who are thriving in Major League Soccer, for Chivas, you can have those big clubs then have more options to bring into Liga MX after seeing what they've done. Maybe you'll see them in the CONCACAF Champions League. Maybe you'll see them in a friendly, and you become aware of who these players are. But I think that then widens and opens up those players who could potentially come over to Mexico. And then I think most importantly, it's the CONCACAF Champions League. I want that to be more exciting. I mean, obviously, I'm a little biased, and as much as I want Major League Soccer to do well, I would be lying if I were to say that when Tigres won last night, there was a little part of me that felt a little good about that. I can't help it. That's because I grew up watching Liga MX. But for the sake of making the competition more exciting and more, at least for Liga MX fans who feel like it's a Copa MX match. The Copa MX is a side tournament that you have over here, down here in Mexico. We need Major League Soccer to step up. I would love to see it. I mentioned that in the article. I would love to see a Los Angeles Galaxy versus Chivas rivalry, or let's see this. Let's see like the Sounders and America. You have one game, the Azteca. You have one game over in Seattle. That'd be incredible. I would love something like that. But I think a growing MLS would be excellent for Liga MX.
Oh, I could just imagine. That would be bonkers, man.
Great, man. I love it.
So, geez, that would sell tickets, and that would fill couches, man. That'd be great. I think the issue just the last couple of years has been there's been so much internal growth within the MLS that it's like teams are afraid to spread themselves too thin, and that they've been not that a lot of like. I think the best Vancouver side, no disrespect to Andrew, is not going to beat the best Tigres side, but
no disrespect at all.
Yeah, the Sounders and the Galaxy and the Torontos of the world, the big guns, FC Dallas as well, just tend to just not give it, I feel like, as much importance as perhaps Manchester United will in the Europa League, or Leicester just did to Sevilla in the Champions League. Like, I think it's going to be important, and I think this Facebook Live thing is going to be really important in the next couple of years of just drawing that American viewership to Liga MX, which I think will incentivize teams or U.S. teams to put more importance on playing Liga MX teams because they know that that's what the people want to see.
And I really do hope. I mean, my assumption is maybe it's just hopeful thinking, that MLS is going to step up and provide, more of those, as mentioned, the financial incentives, at least, to really step up and sign some of those players. Some of those players you could potentially be signing for Liga MX clubs. But I think about the growth of Major League Soccer, and I think about, like, if I was a player, I wrote in that article, like, DeMarcus Beasley, the reason why he went to Mexico was because he saw an opportunity to to become relevant again with the U.S. men's national team by playing in a more competitive league. And the risk he took was that of playing in Mexico, especially for a team like Puebla. This doesn't happen to all the teams, but a team with Puebla where he didn't know whether a paycheck would come through. He didn't know if he was going to get paid or not. And it's just, that was a risk worth taking at that time. And I'm really hoping that if there is an increase in how much these players are getting paid, I'm not just talking about the Gios, the David Villas, the Giovincos. I mean, I'm talking about the rest of the roster where they can get a decent amount of pay. And then when you see in a league that, because it's not split up into two different seasons a year, so therefore you could give more opportunities to young players, because that's also a thing in Mexican soccer. If you're going to try to make the playoffs, in 17 matches, you're not going to give those young guys a chance. Major League Soccer, there's a chance, there's an opportunity that, because there's more games you could go through. So I'm hoping over time, if the league will continue to grow, if you get some of those more noteworthy players coming over to the league, wanting to make the move to the U.S. too, I think that would be great. And as I mentioned earlier, that'd be great for Mexican soccer as a whole as well. But yeah, going back on an earlier question too, I think that they'll be closing the gap as well. They're still there. It's not going to be happening in the near future, as we saw last night for the Whitecaps. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we'll see that gap closed.
Reed, I've been talking a lot. Do you have any other questions?
No, I'm happy. I'm loving this. I think this is one of our better interviews so far.
Yeah, we're getting the hang of this, aren't we?
Yeah.
So to kind of come full circle, back to the Facebook Live thing.
Yeah.
I think this is cool, and I think this will be a big deal for Americans who maybe watch EPL because it's in English and it's on NBC, and maybe watch MLS because it's just on, but they think that it's too hard or too complicated to follow.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? I mean, it makes sense. Why would you watch a league when you're not going to understand a single thing that's going on? I understand that. That makes sense to me. Of course, you would prefer the league where you would be hearing the commentary in English. So I think that makes sense. And it's also, I think the league is also catering towards a growing Latino audience, a growing Latino population. I mean, I'm Mexican American, but I predominantly speak English. You're catering to this market that is embracing English. This isn't just for the casual American soccer fan or fans like yourself who are big EPL fans and watch MLS. This is also for that Latino demographic, specifically to those Mexican Americans who love to hear about Chivas, love to hear about America, but they want to hear it in the language that they usually speak. So I think it's massive, and I just don't understand why the league hasn't. Because my thoughts are, I don't think the league really cares about this. I'd be surprised if any of the teams really think twice about the fact that their games are being broadcast in English. And it's confusing because there's a huge amount of money to be made out here. It's a massive amount of money just waiting for them, just waiting for them to be taken from these fans who want this at least. And my think is, a little sorry, rambling here, but I think that over time, this is a step in the right direction for the league, but I think the league also has to take other steps. I think they need to embrace English language content. I think they need to have English language social media, because over time you're gonna have that significant Mexican American population, Latinos in general, who might think twice, be like, you know what, I'm gonna watch Major League Soccer because I don't understand a single thing that they're talking about with those broadcasts. So I think I think that Facebook Live thing is huge. I think it's huge.
Well, and one thing that you wrote about, there are only 2 teams, I believe, that have English language social media accounts.
Yeah, only 2. Well, I don't.
That was incredible to me. There are lower table Bundesliga teams that have English language social media accounts and don't have near the following. They can only dream of the following in general that some of these teams have in the U.S.
Yeah, that's because of Bundesliga. They know what they're doing. The Bundesliga, you see those tweets every time they send out a tweet about Chicharito, and even in English, blows up. They just and it's something that's just it's frustrating, at least from my own perspective as someone who covers the league in English, it just doesn't click for some people. But I know I've talked to a few people who actually have spoken directly to these teams. And I've talked, I mean, the two teams, by the way, which I should mention, the ones who do it is it's Cholos over here in San Diego. I was going to say San Diego. It feels like San Diego. In Tijuana. Cholos in Tijuana. And then you also have Santos Laguna in Torreon. Those are the only two teams who are doing it. And I mean, for lack of a better word, it's dumb that no one else has done this. It's dumb that Chivas are taking advantages, or America. I mean, I know firsthand. I've talked to people, and I've talked to other people who've talked to the Mexican national team who they've heard about it and they've thought about it, but there's this perceived idea that people think that what works down there, what works in Mexico, will work for the Mexican Americans out here. And although it's wrong, they've still been able to go through with it just because of, I mean, it's hard for them to change when they're already getting so many massive ratings out here. So why would they change? But I don't know, they've got to really take advantage of that. But the Facebook Lives is a step in the right direction.
I just have one more quick question before we wrap up here. This has been awesome, I think.
Oh, yeah, cool.
So I am a Tottenham Hotspur fan. So I enjoy having my heart ripped out, stomped on, and brutalized as much as humanly possible. I also like teams with a good youth system. So are there any teams in Liga MX that I should consider supporting, given that profile?
Well, right now, the team with the best youth system right now is a team called Pachuca. But I think if you're looking for a team, but Pachuca won a title last year. So I think if you're looking for a team,
that will never do.
Yes, so I think if you're looking for a team to really break your heart, it's a team they're essentially seen as bad luck. This team, they're called Cruz Azul. They're from Mexico City, and it's even become somewhat of a verb. You know, the Cruz Azulear, it means to make a mistake, especially at the last second. You know, because they're infamous for allowing late goals. They're infamous for letting titles barely sneak past them, and they're generally it's almost become a meme in Mexico, where especially with a lot of Mexican Americans out here who follow Liga MX, where say there's say there's a loss in the Super Bowl, say there's a loss in another major sporting event, and there'll be a Photoshop Cruz Azul player in the stands. They'll be oh, that's why that team lost, is because the Cruz Azul fans are, or anytime a Cruz Azul fan says oh yeah, I'm a big Falcons fan, and then that'll just blow up social media. But yeah, it's Cruz Azul. Cruz Azul is your team if you want more heartbreak, more misery in your life.
Cruz Azul, you just picked up a new follower, so reporter. Reed, do you have anything else?
No, I think we covered all the bases. The only thing that came to mind was that the German league didn't really start doing English language social content until after they got their big Fox deal. So I think this
never really thought about it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's something that I stand by as something that's totally one-to-one related. And I think this Facebook Live thing is I don't think it's the same magnitude as, a TV deal, but I think I think this could provide some more incentive. Is that gross? This is definitely somewhere to watch. And man, I'm not going to be able to do anything on the weekends now because I got to watch MLS, Liga MX, Premier League, Bundesliga. I'm going to be packed. It's great.
That's the way to do your weekend, Reed.
Yeah.
No schoolwork.
Oh no! What's university, man?
Oh man, I couldn't even imagine trying to balance out my my Liga MX infatuation and watching with schoolwork. Oh my god, even just schoolwork. I'm having flashbacks right now, guys. I don't know.
This has been a fantastic segment. Cesar, if our listeners out there want to learn more about Liga MX, where can they find you on the social or on various media outlets to read what you're putting out?
Yeah, so I mean, for the most part, most of my Liga MX stuff is on ESPN FC. You can follow me on, and you'll see a lot of that stuff on Twitter at what is my Twitter? At Cesar, CESARH, football, FUTBOL. You'll see me on Twitter all the time. So a lot of my stuff on Liga MX you'll see on ESPN FC and also on 442 recently. I've been doing a lot of work there, and I've been doing a lot of Cholos related stuff. Just specifically on Cholos, and actually the significant amount of Americans that they have over there, especially in the youth system too. I do a lot of coverage over there for San Diego's Soccer Nation. That's where I usually do previews and recaps of Cholos.
Fantastic. Well, be
And
sure to check
I'll
them
say
out.
other than that, you'll just find me in Tijuana just eating tacos and watching Cholos, and just come say hi to me at the press box or something.
That sounds great. That sounds like a great job.
Yeah, it's not bad. I can't complain. Yeah.
Well, definitely be sure to check them out, and definitely be sure to check out Facebook live streams for these matches now. I know I will be, and I think Reed as well. So maybe we'll have to have you back on to talk some more after we acquaint ourselves with the joys of Liga MX.
Yeah, of course. I'll have to jump on once you guys watch the Cruz Azul match. I don't know if it'll be this weekend or whenever they have them up on the Facebook Live. I'm not sure if it will be this upcoming week, but once they do, then we'll chat again.
Love to. That sounds great. Great interview so far. Oh.
Well, we'll be back for the final third of the show. I think Jack will have his best thing he's seen all day. But in the meantime, enjoy the music. And I'm going to stop the broadcast now.